Hello Scrolls fans, welcome to Scrollscast. My name is Smogan. I am extremely excited about Waypoints, and we have a Waypoints matchup right here on the live server between Dialex and JoyfulRogue. Dialex appears to be playing a growth build of some sort. I'm looking forward to seeing what exactly it is. And over on JoyfulRogue's side, and he may be streaming this right now actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, so he's got looks like a more of just a ranged deck. He does have a Gravelock Guard, but Stormrunner Hired Smuggler makes me think it may not be full-on Gravelocks, or maybe it's a Gravelock build that just takes advantage of some of the stronger mid-range energy scrolls. So we'll see what he's got in action here. He seems to be thinking about what to sacrifice on this first turn, or if he wants to keep this hand. If he does keep it, he would have the choice, of course, between the Guard or the Smuggler on turn 2 into a Stormrunner on turn 3. Goes ahead and keeps the hand, sacrifices for one resource, and passes it over to Dialex. Dialex has Ancestral Pact, which, frankly, right now, in its current state, is extraordinarily good. Lingers for 3, and for those 3 turns, every time you lose a unit, you draw a scroll. That's really, really powerful. And off the power of his Vader of the Wild, he gets in a second turn Earthborn Mystic. JoyfulRogue will respond. He could, instead of playing out one of his 2-drops, play the Iron Whip to take out the Vader of the Wild and try to put a stop on Dialex's early game aggression a bit, or at least his ramping potential. Would still have to figure out how to deal with that Earthborn Mystic. That's going to be a challenge all game long. Goes up to 2 resources, difficult decision, 3 strong scrolls to play here, chooses the Iron Whip on the Vader, eliminating that threat. And that will be his turn. He'll pass it over to Dialex. And Dialex draws a Quake, sacrifices it for resources, and does not have a turn 3 play, so he just passes. JoyfulRogue, probably overjoyful to see no play on turn 3 for Dialex. He's already a little bit behind, having the second turn disadvantage. Doesn't have a 3-drop. We'll have to choose between one of his 2-drops. I like the Smuggler in this situation, assuming he's got good structures in his deck, and I imagine he would. But I guess both units have Pillage, and the new Pillage ability on the Gravelock Guard that was a late addition before the scroll went live is pretty darn solid. And I'm not sure how much Gravelock synergy he has in the deck, or if he's just playing the Guard for its ability, because it is, well, just a better gun automaton in a lot of decks right now. Gets rid of his Thunder Surge, and chooses the Gravelock Guard, plays it to the bottom middle. Passes back to Dialex, who draws another expensive scroll, the Sister of the Owl, gets rid of it, and drops a Rat King. So this appears to be a mid-range growth build. Obviously is taking advantage of enchantments, but is not the aggro enchantment build that tries to win without going over 4 or 5 resources. I would imagine that he's got God Hands in this build as well. And then, of course, plays out that Rat King, which will be phenomenal with the lingering Ancestral Pact here in a little bit. And here's another Gravelock for JoyfulRogue. He can't play it yet, but he does have the Freak. But he is kind of in an awkward position. Could have played out 2 2-drops, but that would have involved sacrificing one of these powerful scrolls. So he chooses to get rid of his Hired Smuggler. He'll play out the, actually, better choice for him, the Burn to take down his opponent's unit and gain a little bit better board presence. Of course, drawing another Gravelock off of that. Dialex can go up to 5 this turn to play Great Wolf, or he could go ahead and drop an Ancestral Pact. He could even line up the rats so that JoyfulRogue has no choice but to kill one of them and let Dialex draw a scroll. But he's debating between that and playing out the Great Wolf, which is just, I mean, a strong creature on the board, maybe more valuable than drawing those scrolls for now. Positions his rats so that one will have to die this next turn, and making that decision between the 2. Lingers for 3, chooses the Great Wolf, and passes the turn over to Joyful, who has a Lockling Brood. So this is definitely a Gravelock deck at this point, despite the disguised opening hand. Can go up to 5 resources, potentially sacrificing the Guard, and then either play Raider and Lockling Brood or Gravelock Freak. This Freak should not be underestimated. This is a phenomenal scroll. Lockling Brood, its strength, of course, is having high power and only 1 countdown, but really, with this ability, this Freak will count down almost every turn, and should just be seen as a 5-cost 3/1/6. So it is probably a better scroll than the Lockling Brood overall. Of course, the Brood has the downside that the opponent can get rid of it relatively easily. But it may be more valuable for Joyful to play the Brood and the Gravelock Raider, getting 2 units out, but potentially he would rather play the Freak in front and let that tank for the rest of his units for a while. He'll of course be looking for a Gravelock Elder when he can find one. That makes everything much more powerful. On their own, these Gravelocks are decent, but they really shine when you get an Elder or 2 on the board. Gravelock Guard moves up to the front, guarding, as his name would suggest, the Gravelock Freak, who will be counting down next turn, and if Dialex decides to deal damage to this guard at all. Another Ancestral Pact is sacrificed. Could play out a Pact or Brother of the Wolf. Now's probably the turn for Brother of the Wolf. I don't anticipate that Joyful will be killing any of Dialex's units, so now is the time to play out a unit instead of the lingering spell. Moves the rats up so they will not deal damage to the guard, importantly, so that the Gravelock Freak does not count down. And note the Great Wolf is ready to attack. JoyfulRogue draws a Skull Shrine, another powerful lingering scroll, increasing your current energy by 2 every turn while it's in play. Very, very strong scroll, especially if you can get it out on turn 3. This used to cost only 2 on the test server, leading to turn 3 5-drop units very consistently. Now it's turn 4 6 drops, which is still very powerful. On 5 resources, has not sacrificed yet. Could go up to 6, but instead pitches his Gravelock or his Lockling Brood, pulls Fury and Machination Mindset. Let's see, can only really play, he'll almost certainly play the guard, I would imagine, in front, probably just to tank and take down some of these units. He could do a Fury play, but that's probably too risky. Instead, wisely chooses the Skull Shrine and the Gravelock Guard right in front. So he will be ready with his Machination Mindset to deal some good damage next turn. Oh, but look at this draw. Dialex top decking the Rekindled Spirit, so he can sacrifice one of his rats, destroy Joyful's Lingering Scroll, and draw 2 creatures. So that will be pretty strong card advantage when he decides to do that. Instead of doing that this turn, goes ahead and plays out the Ancestral Pact, anticipating all of this combat damage coming in, and that he might be losing some of his creatures. Joyful draws a Gravelock Raider. Let's see, he's definitely going to need to sacrifice. He has 7 resources to play with, so I'd like to see what he's going to have. Gets rid of his Fury, pulls another Gravelock Freak, a very, very strong scroll. Could do Freak and then Machination Mindset and take out 2 of Dialex's units, but of course that would let Dialex draw 2 scrolls. This Ancestral Pact is really, really strong. He could, I'm not sure what his other options are though. I mean, he can't just let these guys run off and deal damage. Decides to do the Mindset. That gets him up to 6 attack, with the back 4 being Relentless, so that will take out the Brother of the Wolf. And then probably the Freak right there in the middle, and that's what we see. And the units are ready to come crashing in. Used all 7 of those resources and takes out 2 units, drawing scrolls after scroll for Dialex. Another Ancestral Pact, so he'll save that so he can replenish his current one when the time comes. For now, drops a Kinfolk Brave. Needs to be careful not to deal irrelevant damage to any Gravelocks, because of course that will count down both Freaks. Goes ahead and uses that Rekindled Spirit, so he gets rid of his own Lingering Spell as well as his opponent's, and a rat, and draws some more scrolls. So able to play something every turn while keeping his hand completely full. Joyful with a very nice Potion of Resistance. I think that's a wise inclusion in these Gravelock decks. A lot of times they are in a position where they're taking quite a bit of damage. And the potion can make it much more difficult for your opponent to get through, especially with how little direct non-damage removal is in the game at this point. So the guard now is potioned and passes the turn over to Dialex, who has that wolf ready to go but won't be able to do much to the potioned guard. Needs to think about what to play in front so that he doesn't lose his wolf. I don't know if he has anything that could do anything about that. He's just going to have to accept that he's going to lose almost everything. I think with this play he will not currently lose the Great Wolf without interference from Joyful, but he does have that Gravelock Elder that will lead to a board wipe of Dialex if he chooses, because the Freak in back would go up to 5 attack, enough to take out the wolf. Joyful goes up to 6, could go Elder into Gravelock Raider. Of course, wiping the board has the downside thanks to the ever-strong Ancestral Pact, drawing Dialex 3 replacement scrolls right from the top. But probably worth it in this situation, keeping Dialex's board clear. And yeah, the downside is, of course, all those scrolls. Look at this very full hand. Dialex will continue to sacrifice up. Or actually, he grabs some scrolls, so he's able to play out a Rat King. So that's more card draw, basically. And he can follow that up probably with an Earthborn Mystic. Unleash Inner Power is decent, but not what he's looking for right now. And plays out that Mystic. Over to Joyful, has a guard and an Iron Whip in hand. The interaction between Iron Whip and Gravelock Freak is hilariously fun. He can Iron Whip one of his other Gravelocks, and that will count down both of his Freaks. So he could kill 3 of Joyful's units this turn if he chooses, or even more with the Machinated. Excellent choice of scrolls that synergize super well with all of his Gravelocks. But no, he did get rid of that Iron Whip, content to just pass the turn over to Dialex, who has a Terran Brute off the top of his deck, another new Waypoints scroll. Strong scroll on turn 3. It's okay in later turns, just a solid 4/4. Basically, it attacks every other turn, so think of it as a 4/2/4 because enough units are going to come into play, especially with Rat King shenanigans. Ancestral Pact down to 1, so if Joyful can avoid killing things for one more turn, he may be in okay shape. I wonder if Joyful runs Corrode. Corrode is nice with the Gravelocks. They get up to this high attack, and then you can wipe 3 idols out of nowhere. Anyway, back to Dialex. He plays out 4 power worth of hasted units. That'll take out the front Raider. We'll probably move his Earthborn Mystic behind these rats, though I don't think it matters with the Relentless. He's going to lose it all anyway if Joyful decides to do so. Joyful has a Fury and a Machinated and a Gravelock Guard. In this case, probably sacrifice the Fury. He's already attacking with almost everything, though he could save it for next turn. Though I'm guessing his Freaks are going to get to attack next turn, unless he decides to kill all of Dialex's stuff, I suppose. And he really has that option. He can kill all but 1 unit from what I see right now. But that would, of course, with the pack, draw Dialex a ton of scrolls. Joyful pitches the 1 scroll and grabs an Uhu off the top of his deck, a phenomenal scroll. Plays out the Machinated, and that is 11 relentless damage on this double Machinated Gravelock Freak. It will increase its base countdown, Machination Mindset and Machinated. It will increase its base countdown up to 3, but again with its ability, it's still likely to attack at least every other turn. Good synergy there. Moves 2 units to the middle, that's going to be 9 idle damage, and currently, the way things are lined up, he will kill 4 of Dialex's units, drawing Dialex up to 10 scrolls in hand, though he won't be able to play all of them out. And here comes all that relentless damage. Death, 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 and some idle damage. Very nicely done. Over to Dialex. An overfilled hand has no choice but to sacrifice up to 8 growth. Can't draw scrolls right now. And let's see, what does he have? He has God Hand, which isn't useful right now, but will be soon. Needs to really populate the board. Maybe Great Wolf, Terran Brute, or I'm sorry, Brute into Great Wolf is the order he would do that. And then next turn, Rat King. He could Brother the Wolf, Rat King, or Brother the Wolf, Terran Brute, Ragged Wolf. That Potion of Resistance is worn off, but Dialex has to be so careful. He's behind on board, and if Joyful has any sort of trick, a Fury or an Iron Whip or something, he can bring the heat again and deal a ton of damage. In a difficult situation, probably wants to save the Quake, though it's a couple of Quakes away from being useful. Selects the Rat King. Populates the board. That'll help him tank for whatever he plays next. Moves into the arrow formation in the middle. Can still afford to play a Brute or Brother the Wolf. Sacrifices for resources, now 4 to play with, and here's the Brother the Wolf down, and then he'll pass his turn. JoyfulRogue has another Uhu. It is, of course, unique, so he will not be able to play it out while his current Uhu Longnose is on the board. So he'll probably pitch that, though he could save it. Though the important thing, though, is the Fury in his hand. With that Fury, he can count down everything. Of course, all of Dialex's units too, but I bet he can get a board wipe here, and that is just going to be devastating for Dialex. Let's see here. He can, with this Relentless, take out that row, line up 3 on the middle row. He can definitely get the board wipe here if he chooses. It's just a matter of what else does he want to do on his turn, and if he sees that math. Well, actually, interestingly, this freak is on 2 countdown because of the machination. So he currently actually can't get that board wipe that I see because he can't get this one to attack. He could get an almost board wipe, kill everything but 1 beast rat, still relatively easily. So that might be the play there, and that would only cost the 3 resources, and then he would have resources to play out either an Oculus Cannon or a Skull Shrine. So that seems to be the play to me. Move everything down and then wipe the board, or almost wipe the board, play out an Oculus Cannon, and then have this freak ready to attack next turn. That's just so powerful. Here's the Fury, and only has 8 seconds. He may not have time to make that movement. I know that he often plays with a voice command system that slows down his movements, or his ability to move sometimes. But units go ahead and crash in. Didn't get the Brother of the Wolf killed, which would have been ideal, but is able to kill most everything. And really, these units are going to be able to do something, but not very much compared to what Joyful has on the board. So Dialex still will be sacrificing up for growth because he has 9 cards in hand. I guess if he really wanted to, he could play 2 units out and then sacrifice for scrolls, but I'd like to see him go up to 9 and try to get more stuff on the board. He could Ragged Wolf, play a wolf from his Brother the Wolf for 4 units on board, and then God Hand, and that would allow him to kill at least 2 of these units. So that would be something. But still in a tough situation. Oculus Cannon played in front to tank for the freak. He could, I don't want to see him Quake right now, it wouldn't do enough. He could, if he got creative, Unleash Inner Power on one of these Elders and then Quake, so that would take it out. And then it would also take out the Gravelock Guard. So here's an Unleash Inner Power actually on the freak, so that brought it up to 19 power, and then a Quake is played, so that does kill the freak. It counts down the other freak, and does damage to all these Gravelocks. So if he can survive long enough to get 1 or 2 more Quakes off, he might be able to claw back into this game. He will likely play out the Ragged Wolf from his hand, and he does, and then needs to decide what to do with this other Brother Wolf. Makes another wolf from it, and so that'll take out the cannon and the Gravelock Guard. So not a bad turn for Dialex, considering what he was facing. Joyful has a Stormrunner, Skull Shrine, and Lockling Brood. Lockling Brood is a strong scroll, a little bit weaker against enchantment growth decks, but I don't think Dialex has very many enchantments or really much that can target this, just those Unleash Inner Powers that I've seen so far at least, and we're almost all the way through his deck due to his draw power. But that's besides the point. JoyfulRogue draws into 2 Stone Enigmas, which are not useful right now. Plays out a Lockling Brood as his play for the turn, up to 6/6 due to the double Elders in play. And moves down to be even more threatening, and will take out one of these wolves with the Gravelock Freak. Uhu comes down as well. Ready for these units to strike in, and here comes the Freak to kill a wolf. Over to Dialex, round 14, 9 resources. Let's see, what kind of God Hand play could he make? He could do Vader into God Hand, and that would kill both of these units, which might be worth it. It might be worth it. He could choose to instead populate the board a little more, and then plan to God Hand next turn. He could do a rally play with Earthborn Mystic into rallying, but yeah, here's the God Hand. I think that is the play to make right now. Taking out 2 of these important Gravelocks, weakening everything else. He is still set to lose all of his units to what Joyful has on the board right now, but at least if Dialex can pull another Quake, he can do a little bit more damage. Joyful will almost certainly sacrifice one of these Stone Enigmas, and he does so. Not a lot of strength in his hand. Has this Stormrunner, which is nice, and then a couple of nice utility spells. The Gravelock Raiders, nice as well, but really would have liked to pull another fat Gravelock to play out there, and that would be more likely to survive. So what's his play this turn? Probably the Raider and Stormrunner, I would guess. He might even play out that Potion of Resistance. Actually, goes ahead and uses Iron Whip on his opponent's unit so that he can take out this middle idol instead of moving the Uhu down. So it gets the board wipe and an idol kill. Nicely played by JoyfulRogue. Dialex top decks another God Hand. Can't use it really effectively yet. We'll need to get stuff on the board first. Sacrifices for Scrolls, has 9 to play with. Could go Great Wolf Earthborn Mystic Vader or Great Wolf Terran Vader, or Terran Great Wolf Vader I suppose would be the play there, and then that would allow a big God Hand, 3-unit God Hand next turn. So here's the Brute as a 4/4. Looks like I'm going to get a Spectate Bug, so I'm going to rejoin and try to make sure I don't miss very much of this. Hopping back in as quickly as possible, apologize for that, still running into those Spectate Bugs, and plays out 3 units. So instead of the Great Wolf with the Relentless, he chooses to play out 2 units in its stead. Perhaps that's a better play, so that's going to be a little bit more God Hand damage. And the Brute is down to 2 countdown, ready to attack next turn as long as any unit is played, or of course God Hand. Joyful has a Thunder Surge, but Dialex positioned relatively well against it. Could get a 2-for-1 in the back here. I'd like to see him sacrifice for Scrolls first and see if he can get some sort of countdown manipulation. A Iron Whip on this Stormrunner would be pretty big too. I'd like to see him pitch that Stone Enigma, though he might save it if he's worried about those Ancestral Packs still. Those are pretty darn strong. See if he can get a Fury maybe. Fury would be probably the best thing he could draw. Doesn't hit it. Did get rid of that Stone Enigma. Has another Stormrunner and a Hired Smuggler, so he could play out 2 units, or he could play out the Thunder Surge and get the 2-for-1 against these cheap units. I don't see a great way that he could get an attack off this turn. I mean, he could Thunder Surge his own Gravelocks to get the Freak off, but that's obviously not going to be his play. Splits his units away from the God Hand, it looks like, trying to minimize the damage that it will do. And here comes that Thunder Surge, well played. So he appears to be anticipating that God Hand and is minimizing the damage that Dialex can do with it. Dialex can go up to 10, do Sister of Fox into God Hand. I'm not sure if that's the play. Let's see, what would he be able to kill with that? He could take out maybe the Freak, and then one of these Raiders is about it. So he could get those 2 killed. It may be better to move his units up, play a creature to get the Brute to attack, which would take out the Raider, move away from the shenanigans down here. He could get his Earthborn Mystic into a safe position, and then do Sister of Fox, hope to draw something useful, and then play Great Wolf. That might be the way to go. So here's that Sister of the Fox, another God Hand. Pitches the Rallying, more units, so he could do Sister of the Fox or Kinfolk Brave. Either are good choices. Chooses the Sister to help minimize the idle damage done this turn. And maybe the Great Wolf down. He could do the Veteran and take out this Uhu. That might not be a bad idea. Uhu is extremely powerful, so that's what we see. So he'll be able to take out 2 of Joyful's units, has control of the top of the board, but Joyful still has the bottom, and with 1 idle down and 1 idle weak, with the right cards, he could end the game out of nowhere. I don't know if he has the Corrodes in the deck, but even with like Machinations, he can get some surprise idle kills. But I'm not anticipating that happening this turn, but he does have this Gravelock Elder, so he'll be able to strengthen all of his Gravelocks. Pulls some nice removal, Violent Dispersal off the top. I don't think that we've seen any other Violent Dispersal, so he may have 2 more left in the bottom of his deck. Though right now I don't anticipate a Dispersal play. I think he'll be getting out this Elder if he can, and then maybe a Potion of Resistance for his front unit if he decides to do so. He doesn't have to at this point, though if he's worried about God Hand, he might do so. Either way, we'll be taking out 2 of Dialex's units, and here's that Elder, and then a Potion of Resistance on the Freak, and get some damage in. Alright, Dialex, what can you do here? Still trying to figure out those God Hand plays, been kind of dancing around it for a while. With this Potion of Resistance, I don't think you can do much with the God Hand. Pulls an Unleash Inner Power, that seems to be the only enchantment in his deck. We've seen his whole deck at this point. Note that God Hand will not fully count down this Terran Brute, even with 1 creature played. So he does sacrifice for Scrolls, has that second Quake, so he could plan to do something with that. Maybe Unleash Power into Quake to... I guess that would only kill off 1 unit, and even 1 of his own. Maybe Sister of the Owl, but nope, chooses the Great Wolf and then an Ancestral Pact. So Note that Ancestral Pact will not draw you scrolls off of your own spells played. It only draws scrolls off your opponent's spells, thankfully. Otherwise, Necrogeddon and Quake would be insane with this already insane scroll. Passes over to Joyful, who has another Freak, almost through the rest of his deck, so we'll see if he has any other tricks up his sleeve. Still looking for a way to break through the Growth defense and get that last idle damage. Dialex is going to get some really strong scroll advantage, or at least replacement scrolls for anything that Joyful is able to kill. Has the Fury in hand as well, so we could see quite a bit killed, especially with this Stormrunner ready to attack and now Machinated. Note also the interaction between Lockling Brood and Fury. You can drop the Brood into a Fury and get it attacking right away. That's why I really love Fury in these Gravelock builds. But anyway, here's that Fury. Here's the Machinated. So we're going to see everything of Dialex is killed. He'll draw 4 scrolls off of it, but he will certainly be feeling the hurt. Joyful may choose to take out the 6 health idol, or he may choose to deal split the idle damage with these elders, or deal 8 to this bottom one. Chooses to deal 8 to the bottom one, so that's 3 idols that are nearly dead. Only needs to knock 2 of them out. Dialex, what are you going to do here? Still has the Unleash Quake combo if he needs it. 9 resources to play with. Sister the Owl into Terran Brute, or Brute into Sister the Owl, sorry, I keep saying that backwards. Seems to be the strong play here. That'll count down the Brute by 2 and be ready for God Hand next turn, which might be his only ticket back into the game as a God Hand board clear. The Freak still has that potion on it. Actually, interesting, they seem to have added this countdown on this potion of resistance. It says for 2 rounds instead of for 3 rounds, so let's see if that changes, and it does. Okay, so there's now finally a visual indicator that the potion is about to wear off. That's really nice. But anyway, back to the game. The Owl moved up, and ooh, Snargle Omelet. I was wondering if those were in this deck. This is another phenomenal Gravelock scroll, powerful, especially with the Oohoos when you get those combo turns. But with his hand being this full, the Omelet isn't going to be great right now, so he will probably play out. Let's see, no countdown reduction, unfortunately for him, no Iron Whip or anything like that. So he is just sort of at the mercy of what Dialex can do. Importantly, moves this Freak in front of his Elders, so that's going to prevent the God Hand from getting through and doing much damage. Maybe plays the Freak in front of his Stormrunner, and that's what we see. So that's up to a 5/8. That's a powerful, powerful unit. Passes the turn over to Dialex, who has that God Hand, 10 resources to play with. If he had 12, he could do Rat King into God Hand, but 1 resource shy of being able to sacrifice up to do that. Man, with that Potion of Resistance, the God Hand plays aren't great. He can take out these 2 units, but then he's going to feel the hurt from all of this Gravelock power. Maybe he just tries to survive and wait till next turn to do a God Hand play. Maybe goes up to 11 to preemptively plan to go to 12 next turn for the Rat King God Hand, anticipating that he'll lose many units this turn and just draw some scrolls off of them from the Ancestral Pact. I don't see a Quake play that's really powerful here. Let's see, maybe Sister of the Owl, Brother of the Wolf, sacrifice the Unleash Inner Power to 11 and plan for Rat King God Hand next turn and hope that that's enough to get back into the game. Because I don't think Joyful can kill everything. He should only be able to kill 3 of the units. Maybe he stacks up on this center idol and sacrifices this bottom one. Tons of difficult decisions here. He could just go Sister the Owl into Rat King and just do a lot of tanking. Let's see, what should he do with this Owl is another question. Does go up to 11 resources. Looked like he sacrificed a Brother of the Wolf. Here's that Unleash Inner Power, and then the God Hand. So actually that will get through and kill that Freak. So that was a decent God Hand. Not a phenomenal one. He'll lose, unfortunately, all of his units this turn, but at least he'll be able to Rat King God Hand next turn, or even Quake Rat King if he decides to. Let's see here. So that was a decent play. Over to Joyful, who has Burn. Very nice scroll. Stormrunner, Lockling Brood, Machinated. Lots of power in his hand. Only 6 resources to play with. Let's see, he could go up to, if he goes up to 7, he could do Brood into Stormrunner or Brood into Omelet or something like that. No Relentless on board right now, so Machinated is not ready to be super powerful. Pitches for scrolls and finds an Oohoo and an Iron Whip. So he's already set to wipe the board. So maybe not the time for Iron Whip, unless he may see a play here. If he can, with a machinated play, this might be the game actually. If he moves his Freak, actually the Stormrunner will deal damage first, so that will wipe the board in time for these 3 Gravelocks to get in and deal that idle damage. Excellent play by JoyfulRogue. That's actually going to be for the game. He can press the Hourglass, end the turn, and the Gravelocks will kill these 2 idols as things stand right now. I bet he sees it too. Only a few seconds left. Dialex sees the writing on the wall as well and concedes. Very well played by the Gravelock deck, piloted by JoyfulRogue. This has been Smogan with Scrollscast. A long game here, but a really interesting strategic back and forth as Dialex continued to try to find a way to wipe the board. This has been Smogan. Thank you guys for watching.